I want you to understand who my wife is before I tell you what she endured. Evelyn is not a complainer. That is the first thing anyone who knows her will tell you. She grew up in a small town outside of Columbus, the middle child of 5. In a house where the rule was you didn't talk about hard things at the dinner table, because there were always harder things coming. She learned to absorb. She learned to smile through the kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up on your face, but lives somewhere behind your eyes. She is 61 years old. She has a laugh that fills a room, and she has never, not once in the 34 years I have known her, asked anyone for a single thing she didn't feel she'd already earned. I am telling you this because what happened last Christmas needs that context. Without it, you might think what my daughter-in-law did was just rude, a misunderstanding. A generational thing, maybe, or the kind of miscommunication that happens when a young couple tries to coordinate a big holiday. It was not any of those things. My name is Robert, and I am 58 years old. I retired early from civil engineering, 30 years of highway infrastructure work, more time spent on interstates than I care to remember. Evelyn and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. We have a house we paid off 8 years ago, a garden that takes more work than I expected, and a life that we built carefully and deliberately, with our hands and with time. We don't have a lot of excess. We have enough. We are grateful for what we have. We have one son. His name is Brandon. He's 33, works in finance in Charlotte, and about 3 years ago he married a woman named Cassidy. I want to be careful here, because I don't want to paint Cassidy as a villain from the start. She is not without good qualities. She is organized. She is ambitious. She keeps their condo looking like something out of a catalog, and she has strong opinions about things, which I generally respect even when those opinions are different from mine. But Cassidy has always treated Evelyn like staff, not overtly. She's never said anything cruel. It's more the way she talks to her, the tone she takes, the way a request arrives already shaped like an instruction. She calls Evelyn Han in a way that doesn't feel warm. She'll say things like, "I'm going to need the green bean casserole recipe, Han," instead of asking if Evelyn minds sharing it. Small things. But small things have a way of adding up, especially when the person absorbing them is someone like Evelyn, who will absorb until she can't anymore. Brandon sees it and says nothing. That is the part that has always sat wrong with me. My son is a good man in many ways. He is generous. He calls on birthdays. He shoveled my driveway without being asked after my back surgery 2 winters ago. But he has never once, in 3 years of watching his mother treated like a household resource, put his hand on Cassidy's arm and said, "Hey, that's my mom, ease up." I've told myself it wasn't my place to say anything, that they were figuring out their marriage, finding their rhythm. I told myself a lot of things. The list arrived on a Tuesday in late November. Not a phone call, not a conversation, a list. Cassidy had texted it to Evelyn at 11:14 in the morning, and Evelyn didn't show it to me until dinner that night. And when she handed me her phone across the kitchen table, I remember the way she was watching my face as I read it. Not like she wanted my reaction. More like she was steeling herself for the moment I confirmed what she already knew. The text said, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly, "Hey, so for Christmas dinner this year, I've been thinking it would be so special if we did a full traditional spread." I put together a little list of what I'm envisioning. Everything from scratch would be amazing. Cody's family is coming too, so we'll be around 18 people. We're thinking a 2 p.m. sit down, so if you could plan to have everything ready by then, that would be perfect. Brandon can come by with the car to help you load up. The list that followed had 16 items on it. 16, a standing rib roast, homemade rolls, 4 separate side dishes, 2 of which required techniques Evelyn hadn't used in years, a layered trifle for dessert, gravy from scratch, a cranberry relish with a specific type of orange Cassidy named by variety, and at the very bottom, as if it were an afterthought, "Also, could you bring your good serving dishes, the big ones?" I put the phone down. I picked up my fork. I set it back down again. "When did you get this?" I asked. "Lunchtime," Evelyn said. "And you've just been carrying it around all day." She looked at me. I didn't know what to say. "I want to tell you," I said something brilliant in that moment. Something measured and clear. What I actually did was take a long drink of water and stare at the window above the sink for about 30 seconds, while the radiator clicked in the corner and the dog shifted under the table. Then I said, "Is this what she thinks of you?" And Evelyn said quietly, "I think it might be. What I need you to understand is that we had been doing this for 3 years. Evelyn had cooked for every gathering that involved our son's home. Every birthday dinner, every Sunday they came through Asheville, every time Cassidy hosted anything and needed food that was really good. She had driven dishes to Charlotte in a cooler. She had stayed up until midnight before Easter putting together a coconut cake, because Cassidy mentioned she loved coconut cake. She had lent serving platters she never got back, and Evelyn had done all of it without complaint, because that is who Evelyn is. She does not keep score, she does not wave flags. She gives, and she assumes eventually the people around her will notice. Cassidy had not noticed, or she had noticed, and simply decided it was fine. There is a difference between those two things, and I have spent time thinking about which one it was. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure it matters. That night, after dinner, after we had done the dishes, and the dog had gone to her bed in the corner, and the house was quiet, Evelyn sat down in the chair by the window, the way she does when she's thinking something through. I sat across from her. I didn't say anything. I've learned in 34 years when she needs to talk and when she needs quiet. After a while, she said, "I don't want to do it." I said, "Then we're not doing it." She looked at me like I had said something surprising, like it hadn't occurred to her it was that simple. "Brandon will be upset," she said. "Maybe," I said. "Cassidy will make it into something. She might." "It'll be a whole thing, Robert Evelyn," I said, and I waited until she looked at me. "When is the last time someone asked if this was okay with you?" She didn't answer for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm not sure anyone ever has." That was the sentence that settled it for me. Not the 16-item list. Not the serving dishes. Not the standing rib roast for 18 people. It was that sentence, the quiet way she said it, like she was realizing something she'd been circling for a long time. I had a phone call the next morning with my old college roommate, a man named Bill, who moved to Sedona, Arizona about a decade ago. After he and his wife Diane decided they were done with Ohio winters, he and I talk every few weeks, the way men our age talk, long gaps, then long conversations that cover everything. He and Diane had mentioned earlier in the fall that they were thinking about having some people out for the holidays. Nothing formal. Their place out in Sedona, some hiking, good food, a fireplace, open invitation for anyone who wanted to come. I called Bill after breakfast and asked if the invitation was still open. He said, "Are you kidding me? Get out here." I did not say anything to Brandon or Cassidy, not yet. I wanted to talk to Evelyn first, really talk, make sure this was what she wanted, and not just what I wanted for her. That afternoon I told her what Bill had said. I told her I thought we should go. Not as punishment, not as a statement, just as a choice. We were choosing ourselves this year. We were choosing a fireplace in Arizona, and our friends, and our own peace. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'd have to find someone to watch the dog." "I already called Carol next door," I said. She said yes. She looked at me for a long moment, then she smiled. It was small, but it was real. It was the smile she gets when something lands right. "Okay," she said. I booked the flights that night. 2 round-trip tickets, Asheville to Phoenix, connecting through Atlanta. I found us a window seat and an aisle. I paid the extra $12 for early boarding, because Evelyn always worries about overhead space, and I figured this trip she should not have to worry about a single thing. I also, because I believe in doing things properly, wrote a note. I'm not going to reproduce every word of it here, but I will tell you the essential parts. I told Brandon that we loved him. I told him we were grateful for every good thing in our relationship with him, and that nothing about our decision was meant to change that. I told him that his mother had been giving her time and her energy and her talent for 3 years, without anyone once asking if she was okay with it, and that we hoped he could understand that this year we were going to spend the holiday differently. I told him we would be at Bill's in Sedona if he wanted to call. I kept it even. I kept it honest. I didn't call anyone selfish or ungrateful or oblivious, even though I was thinking at least 2 of those words. I left the note on our kitchen table, and we called a cab to the airport at 4:30 in the morning. The flight was smooth. Evelyn slept through most of the connection. She had her head against the window somewhere over Tennessee, and I sat next to her, and I watched the clouds below us, and thought about the kind of life you build when nobody asks you what you want, and you just keep giving anyway, and what it takes to finally say, "This year, we are doing something different." Sedona is not the kind of place that lets you stay tense. It is red rock and open sky and light that does things at dusk that I didn't know light was capable of doing. Bill picked us up at the Phoenix airport in his truck, the 3 of us, filling the cab on the way out, talking and laughing the way you do with old friends, where the years disappear and you're just people again. Diane had the house warm when we got there. There was a pot of soup on the stove. There were other friends coming, a couple from Flagstaff, another from Tucson, and the whole gathering had the feeling of something easy, something chosen, something that no one was attending out of obligation. Evelyn stood in Bill and Diane's kitchen the first evening, and watched Diane stir something on the stove and talked about nothing important, the way women talk, and I watched her shoulders drop. I watched her exhale. She hadn't even known she was holding her breath. I didn't hear from Brandon until Christmas Eve. He called at 7:42 in the evening. I know the exact time because I had just sat down on the back porch with a glass of wine to watch what Sedona does with a sunset. And I looked at my phone and saw his name and felt the complicated thing I always feel when I see it. Love and anticipation, and something cautious underneath both. I answered. Dad, he said. Hey son. There was a pause. You're in Arizona, we are, I said. I didn't know you were going to do this. I left a note, I said. Did you get it? Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, I got it. And then Cassidy is pretty upset. I waited. She had all of this planned, he said. Her family's here. We didn't have enough food, Dad. We had to scramble. I kept my voice even. I'm sorry to hear that was difficult. He stopped, started again. Was it really necessary to just leave? Without talking to us first? And this is the part I want to tell you about, because this is the part I had thought about on the plane and in the quiet of Bill's guest room, and on every walk I'd taken in the Red Rock those first 2 days. I had thought about what I would say when this moment came, and I had thought about it carefully, the way I think about things, which is slowly and from multiple angles, and with full awareness that I could be wrong. I said, Brandon, when did anyone ask your mother if she wanted to cook Christmas dinner for 18 people? Silence. When did anyone ask if she was free, if she was up for it, if she needed help or had other plans or just wanted a year off? More silence. Your mother has cooked every meal, carried every dish, and lent every serving platter without once being asked if that was okay with her. The list Cassidy sent her had 16 items on it. 16. For 18 people. From scratch, and at the bottom it said to bring the good serving dishes. I heard him breathing. I love you, I said. I love you very much. But this year, your mother gets to choose how she spends Christmas, and she chose Sedona. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that I looked out at the last of the sunset and watched a hawk circling over the mesa in the distance. And I thought about how my son is a good man, who learned certain things from watching us, and failed to learn certain other things, and how that is true of all children, and how it is never too late to learn the things you missed. He said, I didn't realize she felt that way. I know you didn't, I said. That's what I'm telling you. We talked for another 20 minutes. It wasn't easy. There were things he said that I pushed back on, and things I said that he pushed back on. And at one point his voice got tight in the way it gets when he is trying not to cry, which he has done since he was 7 years old, and which still affects me the same way it did then. We did not resolve everything. We were not going to resolve everything on Christmas Eve on a back porch in Arizona. But we talked. We talked honestly, in a way that I do not think we have talked in a while. Before we got off the phone, he said, Tell Mom Merry Christmas. Tell her yourself, I said. So I passed the phone to Evelyn, who was sitting in the chair beside me with her own glass of wine, and I watched her face as she talked to him. I watched the careful way she listened. I watched her nod at something he said, and then I watched something in her expression shift, soften, the way something softens when you realize you've been heard. She talked to him for 10 minutes. When she handed the phone back to me, he was gone. He apologized, she said. Good, he said. He's going to talk to Cassidy. I nodded. I don't know if that'll change anything, she said. Maybe not, I said, but he knows now. That counts. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the dark shape of the mesa against the sky. Then she picked up her wine glass and she said simply, This is nice. And it was. It was genuinely, simply, enormously nice. Dinner that night was the 6 of us around Bill and Diane's big oak table, passing dishes, talking loudly, laughing at the story Bill told about a hiking trail that did not go the way he planned. Evelyn made a dessert. She wanted to, she said, because she actually wanted to, and she knew the difference now. It was a pecan pie, from a recipe she's been making since before Brandon was born. And she made it in someone else's kitchen without a 16-item list, and without a deadline, and without anyone telling her what to bring. After dinner, we sat by the fire, and the conversation wandered through the years, the way conversations do. When people have known each other long enough that any subject is available to them. At some point, Bill's friend from Tucson asked how we were spending Christmas Day, and Evelyn said, "Exactly like this," and she meant it. I have been thinking, since we got back to Asheville, about what changed and what didn't. Cassidy has not called Evelyn. That is notable, though not surprising. Brandon has been in touch more than usual, which I choose to read as something. He called twice in January for no particular reason, which he has not done in years. We are planning to see them in the spring, and I find myself cautiously hopeful about what that visit might look like. Not fixed, but at least aware. That is different from how it was before. What I know with certainty is this. Evelyn came home from that trip different. Not dramatically, not in some transformed way that you'd see in a movie. But there was something settled in her that hadn't been there before. She walks through the kitchen differently. She sits in her chair by the window, without that sense of something unresolved hovering over her. Last week she told me she's thinking about taking a painting class. She used to paint years ago, before we had Brandon, before the years that are mostly about other people. She mentioned it casually, the way you mention something you're only half sure of, and I said, "You should do it," and she said, "Yeah, I think I might." That is not a small thing, that is the whole thing. We did not yell, we did not issue ultimatums, we did not send a long email laying out grievances or demand a family meeting or give anyone a piece of our mind in the way that sometimes feels satisfying in the moment and leaves a mess for years. We left a note. We got on a plane. We sat with people who were glad we came, in a place that had no history of obligation attached to it, and we let Christmas be what it was supposed to be. We chose ourselves. After 34 years of giving, we had one Christmas where we chose ourselves, and it turned out that was exactly what we needed. I'm still glad we went.